Hello, everyone. Welcome to Forum Friday. On Forum Friday, me and Mark dive into the forums to see what's going on. Welcome, Mark.
Hi, everybody. Great to see you again.
Hey, Mark, what's going on the forums? I mean, how many members do we have now?
Well, yes, I'm glad you asked. We are growing, like crazy. Every day, I'm getting more and more welcome messages. I always post a nice welcome message because I want everybody to know that we do appreciate them joining and we do notice, right? So we are up to 1,851 members now.
Wow.
We had, like, even just this week, we had 30 join this week. So this is really cool, right?
So,
Um,
just for my knowledge, how does that equate to posts per day or active members per day?
Well, we have active members. We have about 1,200 members in the past month who are actively engaged on the group. And on a daily basis, there are between 400 and 500 members actively engaged every day within the groups. The busiest day for posting tends to be Sundays. For some reason, it shifts. I mean, sometimes it was Fridays before, but lately it's been Sundays. And so we have really good engagement. The group is very active, and we get great posts and questions and activity in answering those questions as well.
I think I know why it's a weekend activity. And this is on Facebook, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
People are working during the week.
Hmm. Yeah.
We don't have time to go personal until the weekends.
Yeah.
And on the weekends, they're on our page. So I feel honored that they still want to work on a weekend.
Yes.
Um, so there are a few questions that come up to my radar that I want to cover today. One
Hmm.
of those is the discussion around the cake premix. Can you share with the audience what's going on there?
This has been a very, very active discussion and a very interesting one as well. It started out with the gentleman making a premix, and he decided that, well, maybe I should bake my premix before I try and sell it, which is always a good idea. Um, and his cakes were turning black on the inside. And so he was completely perplexed as to why his cakes were turning black. So he turned to us to ask the question. And together we managed to troubleshoot for this for him. And what it turned out to be is that he had a much too high a level of baking soda. When you have so much alkalinity, it starts to change color. It usually will start off with a reddish brown, and it can get very, very dark. And so it was
Yeah.
basically reacting with other ingredients and making the crumb appear almost black in color.
Wow.
So we helped him adjust that for him and point him in the right direction for other leavening acids to combine that with, in terms of removing baking powder and using components instead. It gives you more control, and in the long run, it also saves you on cost, right? And then we've been working with him to help him try and locate emulsifiers to get the right kind of sponginess and lightness that he is wanting. So between myself and several other members have been providing feedback for him and giving him direction. And like I've also suggested him a simplistic way of trying to create your own specific gravity measurement, to find a beaker or a cup that is something around 100 mil if you can, right? And you put that on your scale and you tare it, and then you fill it with water to the very brim and write that number down. So if it's 110, for example, you write down 110. And then when you've whipped your batter, you fill the batter in that same cup to the very top after tearing the container, of course, and then weigh it, so that if it now weighs 80 grams, you take that 80 and divide it by the 110 that you wrote down, and that gives you what your specific gravity is, which in that case might be somewhere around a 0.7 or something like that. And so that gives you control and helps you understand how much air you're incorporating into the mixture, because the air is also part of your leavening system, is part of making that cake nice and spongy when it goes into the oven. So we've been having that, and it's been very good feedback. The member is very appreciative of the input, and he's making progress.
Yeah, I mean, you have there like a classic textbook case study of Maillard reaction happening.
Yep.
You know, and with cakes is always that, and any kind of discoloration of cakes is really, you know, because of the leavening system. I mean, after all, chemical leavening, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's awesome. That really helps out a baker, and it really helps out the rest of the community to be able to discuss these problems out front. People learn so much. Thank you, Mark.
Because even if you're not making a cake mix, the same thing applies for making a cake batter. So you're able to learn from these same things.
Correct. So let's talk about bread next. And let's talk about, why do bread shrink when it cools?
Well, sometimes there's always a little bit of shrinking. And with some of the artisan breads, like with a classic French bread, a lot of us actually like the sound when you've pulled the fresh bread out of the oven, and just moments afterwards you hear that crackling sound.
Yes, I
and
love
where the crust is crackling because the bread is shrinking slightly. It always will shrink slightly. That is quite normal. But when it shrinks severely, that the sides are caving in or is inverting from the bottom, that's usually a sign that it's overbaked. Overbaking can be just time in the oven that's too long. It can also be that the temperature is simply too high. So again, a good thermal profile is very helpful here. At the very least, I would insert a wired or wireless thermometer into the bread, that you can check it close to doneness to make sure that you're not baking much over that 180 Fahrenheit, which is, we just really need to set all the starches and kill off all of the bacteria and the yeast and so on. The yeast kill is long done by that point. And so you're not evaporating too much moisture and stuff as well, because then as you bring this out of the oven and it cools, you don't have all this heat pushing the steam to its sides. So then as what water is left starts cooling, it starts to compress and shrink. So that is why it pulls the bread together. And so that's, overbaking is usually the most common problem.
That's correct. And did anybody add to the fact that depanning has to happen as soon as it comes out?
Yes, that's the other one. Yeah. There was actually another conversation a week or two ago about asking if they could leave the bread in the pans for half an hour or so. No. You have to pull them out right away. That's the important step.
Yeah, I've seen a huge difference between cooling in the pan and cooling out of the pan. You know, firstly, why would you cool in the pan? Because it takes a long time to cool, right? I mean, the metal keeps the heat in, right? So that's the question.
Yeah, and you can stack up the empty pans, but you can't stack up the bread once it comes out of the oven. So make sure you have space to turn it out, put it onto a rack or something for cooling, ideally where air can flow all around it, so that it's not, take it out a pan and then have it standing on a wooden bench or a metal countertop or something like that. Then the moisture needs to be able to flow out and cool evenly. Otherwise, it will start to shrink and or sweat.
Yes. So, Mark, let's go back to the question of cupcakes. We had a discussion around cupcakes with white things on top.
White dots. Yeah, little white specks are appearing on top of the cupcakes.
Yeah.
Now, if it was something over time, some people might think that it's mold, but this is something that is happening in a very short period of time, in a matter of just a couple of days. And what I've seen this most commonly be is what we would often refer to as sugaring. And this is when there's a very high level of sugar in the formula, and that sugar is finding a way to recrystallize. And so it forms these little white dots on the top. We actually see this a lot in chocolate making too. Is when chocolate is has not been conched properly or tempered properly. Besides the cocoa butter rising to the top, you can get sugaring
Right.
as well.
Right.
So in a cake, we usually see it it looks more like a ring all the way around the top. But in something like the cupcakes, this could be that the sugar isn't well dissolved or well mixed. And so then there's crystals that then attract other of sugar and it recreates this. The only thing it would be a flour that's not mixed in, but then you would see that coming out of the oven already. Given that this starts to form a couple of days afterwards, it's most likely got to do with sugar recrystallizing.
That's great. I agree with that. Nothing that emulsifiers can stop. And how about the other one with cupcakes with sticky tops?
Yeah, this is still a conversation that's ongoing, and they're having very sticky tops inside the packaging. Um, there's a number of things that it could be. Sometimes it's simply that the formula is a little too high in sugar, so that it's forming a lot of humectancy on the surface and attracting water. The most common thing that tends to be this is they're being packaged too warm. They're not being allowed to cool properly. So it is then still cooling in the package, and moisture is rising off of it, and it gets attracted to the sugar in on the top in the package and starts then becoming very sticky. So we're still working on that with the member on working those things out. And so those two most common things have been pointed out to them. Sometimes increasing starch in the formula helps. In other words, reducing wheat flour and adding something like wheat starch or corn starch can help give a slightly drier top. But if it's more than 100% in ratio to the flour on sugar, which a lot of cakes are, it's likely too high of a sugar ratio. So usually want to stay below 120. 100, some of them are over 120% sugar, and those get very, very sticky.
Right. That's very, very accurate in terms of the solution, Mark. Thanks so much on that. Let's move on to the next topic discussion, which is really unusual. We don't really deal with this kind of product, which is the Florentine. Can
Mm-hmm.
you explain a little bit more about that problem?
Well, Florentine, if for those who aren't familiar with it, is a type of cookie that it's extremely popular in Europe and also in the Middle East. And it is traditionally it's made with almonds and sugar and honey and some butter. And so the sugar, honey, and butter is cooked to a consistency that enough moisture has evaporated that it still is a thick syrup a bit, and then the nuts are incorporated, and it's deposited to make these round cookies that are traditionally are coated with chocolate on the backside after they're baked. Right? And so what this member is experiencing is that he's finding that his Florentine cookies are tasting rancid after about 8 to 9 days, which is highly unusual. Now, one of the things that he's doing that is very different is that he's not doing just almonds. He's using all kinds of different seeds. He's using pumpkin seeds like pepitas and sesame seeds and sunflower seeds and things like that. Well, all of these seeds and nuts, they are very high in unsaturated fat. Unsaturated fat and polyunsaturates, which are good for you. They're healthy fats. But the downside with these fats is that they're not as stable. They have more oxidative sites, so they can go rancid quicker if they aren't handled properly. And I say this because one of the mistakes he is making innocently is he had the right idea, but one of the mistakes he's making is he's toasting the nuts and everything before mixing them with his honey mixture. So this rise and fall of temperature, if toasting the nuts, cooling them down, getting them hot again into the honey mixture, and then they're cooling down again, and then they heat up again, going into the oven, that's accelerating the basically the rancidity, is creating what are called FFAs, free fatty acids, and this is what we taste as rancidity. And so it tastes kind of soapy, is what people will often describe it as.
And through my work with a lot of such systems, honey is just not a good thing for rancidity. Every time you add honey into any kind of seeded mixture, there's tons of oxidative activities going on, and it's it's not just not a good mixture with seeds. And plus, what you said, seeds are very, very unstable.
Yep.
Their oils are not sequestered, so you need to really use something like EDTA or some antioxidant system to be sprayed under the seeds before you actually mix them with honey. So he's got the seed issue and a honey issue. If you reduce the honey issue, it will have the problem, but you still have the seeds issue, and seeds don't react very well with heat and oxidation. So, it's really no win-win in this situation. I feel so bad for that person, but
Well, one of the key things that he can do is to not toast the seeds. They will get enough toasting in the baking process. And that is also key too, because the honey mixture, if he is going to use honey, it needs to be cooked long enough to reduce the amount of water in the mixture. Because the thing that is causing the problem, as you rightly state, with honey is all the moisture that's there. Honey is anywhere from 25 to 30% water. And so that needs to be evaporated. And by the same token, then the baking has to be done long enough too to further evaporate more of that moisture. Moisture is the enemy to the fat. That is going to cause the oxidation.
That's why
and then if he wants to stay natural, add rosemary extract. That is a wonderful antioxidant. And you can when you use the extract, it actually does not impart any rosemary flavor, and it does give a lot of stability to unsaturated fats.
Correct. Yeah. Keep an eye on the oxidative factor when it comes to rancidity, any kind of rancidity problems, and you will have a better shelf life out of your product, whatever product that is.
Yep.
So, Mark, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you.
And thank you for keeping the forums engaged and helping in and chipping in whenever you can.
My pleasure. It's great to have so many members who are engaging in the conversation, and there's the odd one once in a while that I just kind of have to remind them to calm down a little bit. But it's been going very well.
Right? It's just a forum.
Just have fun. We don't want anybody getting frustrated. We all want to enjoy it and learn from each other.
Right. So thanks, Mark. I'll see you again next month.
All right. Take care, everybody. See you next month.
Bye.
Bye.